The dashboard thermometer read 14 degrees and dropping fast, but the wind told me the truth before the numbers did. It hit the side of my modified rescue truck with a low, hollow thud, the kind of sound that only came when a winter pressure system collapsed directly over the ridge. Snow blew across the access road in hard white sheets, erasing tire marks almost as soon as they appeared. I kept both hands on the wheel and scanned the line of dark summer cabins ahead of me. Cabin 4 was supposed to be empty. The resort ledger clipped to my dash said the Flores party had checked out 3 hours earlier. Family retreat, 2 SUVs, 4 guests. Departure confirmed by the front desk at noon. But the driveway told a different story. One set of fresh tire tracks cut away from the cabin and disappeared down the mountain. No second vehicle. No chimney smoke. No porch light. No generator hum. I killed the engine and sat there for 1 second, listening to the storm push against the truck. People underestimated cold, because cold did not look dramatic from inside a warm building. It did not shout. It did not bleed. It just removed choices until the body stopped fighting. I grabbed my emergency pack, clipped the radio to my shoulder, and stepped into the wind. Snow snapped against my face as I crossed the porch. The front door was unlocked. That was the first wrong thing. Mountain cabins in winter did not sit unlocked unless someone had left in a hurry or wanted the next person to believe nothing was wrong. I pushed the door open. Regional Mountain Authority, I called. Cabin sweep. Is anyone inside? For a moment, only the wind answered. Then I heard a sharp intake of breath from the far corner of the living room. I angled my flashlight toward the floor, letting the beam spread gently across the log walls. A woman sat in a heavy wooden chair near the cold stove, both hands folded around a folder in her lap. She wore a pale blue floral dress under a thin cardigan, the kind of clothing that made sense for a family lunch in July, and no sense at all at 8,000 feet in a winter shutdown. The dress told me one thing only. Whoever left her here had not planned for her to walk out safely. Her dark hair had loosened around her shoulders. Her lips had gone pale. She was not shivering. That was the worst sign in the room. I dropped my pack and pulled out my emergency parka. "I'm going to set this over your shoulders," I said. "You can put your arms through when you're ready." Her eyes moved from the coat to my face. No panic. Not yet. Just the frozen calculation of someone trying to decide whether the stranger in front of her was another problem. "My father took the SUV keys," she said. Her voice scraped on the last word. "He said I needed the night to reconsider my loyalty." I placed the parka across the back of the chair, close enough for her to reach, not forcing it onto her. "Your name?" "Chloe Flores. Ethan Scott, Regional Expedition Guide and Lead Safety Officer for this sector." I pointed to the stove. "I'm going to get heat into this room first. Then you can tell me what happened." She put her arms through the parka sleeves with stiff fingers. Good. Responsive, oriented, still capable of following direction. I went to the stove. Cold iron, no ash glow, no prepared fire. I checked the wood box. Half full. Damp on top, dry underneath. "Why are you here?" I asked. "While building the tinder stack." "My father owns Flores Commercial," she said. "He brought me here with my cousins for a family retreat. It was supposed to be a discussion." "About what?" "My independent architecture firm. I left his company last week. I took 2 clients with me because they hired me personally, not the family brand." A piece of the first anchor clicked into place. Why she was here. Family intervention, disguised as a retreat. I struck the ferro rod. Sparks jumped into the tinder. Thin flame caught, bent, then strengthened. "What does he want from you?" "He wants me to sign the reintegration papers. If I sign, my new firm folds back into Flores Commercial. My contracts, my designs, my pending investor meeting, everything goes back under his control." She pulled the folder tighter against her lap. "If I refuse, he says the board will hear that I disappeared during a storm, ignored family advice, and proved I'm too reckless to run anything independently." Second anchor. His leverage. Reputation, contracts, family control, and now the mountain. I added kindling and waited until the first real flame licked the underside of the logs. "Why didn't you leave with them?" Her mouth tightened. "I tried. The SUV keys were gone. My phone had no signal. He said the generator would kick in and a driver would come in the morning once I had time to think." The stove began to tick as the metal warmed. I stood and crossed to the breaker panel. Dead. Then I keyed my radio. "Base, this is Scott. I'm at cabin 4 with one stranded guest. Generator down. Cabin occupied. Need extraction if the trail holds." Static hissed back. No repeater. The storm had already taken the high tower. I looked at Chloe. Stay near the stove. I'm checking the generator housing. Outside, the cold hit harder after the first minute of cabin air. I rounded the side wall to the metal generator shed and unlatched the access panel. The smell of fuel was faint but present. Fuel was not the issue. I did not need the multimeter. The main spark plug wire had been cleanly cut. Not broken, cut. Someone had disabled the generator and left a woman in a summer cabin during a code red freeze. I stood there long enough for the wind to push snow across my boots. I hated many things about mountain work: bad forecasts, drunk tourists, cheap cabin owners who ignored insulation codes. But I hated one thing more than all of it: people using the mountain as a weapon. I went back inside, brushed snow off my jacket, and closed the door firmly behind me. Generator was disabled, I said. Chloe's face changed. Not shock. Confirmation. Indif, he really did it. Yes. He said he only wanted to scare me. He did more than that. The fire inside the stove was beginning to take. Orange light moved across the log walls and the old woven rugs. The room still held the cold, but it no longer owned it completely. My truck will not make it down, I said. The access road is already drifted over, and the wind is filling the cuts faster than plows can clear them. The radio repeater is out. We have two options. Hold this cabin if it stays structurally safe, or move to my high ridge outpost if the cabin fails. Your outpost? 2 miles uphill, reinforced concrete, satellite comms, food, heat. 2. In this storm, only if staying becomes more dangerous than moving. She looked at the black window. What do you need me to do? That question mattered. Not save me. Not fix this. What do you need me to do? Third anchor. My buy-in was already clear. I was the safety officer responsible for this sector, and someone had been left in a winter cabin under my watch. But that question told me Chloe was not a helpless guest. She was a person trying to get back inside her own agency. I pulled the emergency checklist from my pack and placed it on the table. First, we seal drafts. Then, we bring in dry wood. Then, we inventory food and water. After that, you show me those papers so I understand what your father is going to try next. Her gaze sharpened. You believe there will be a next? People who cut generator wires do not usually stop at one bad decision. Chloe stood carefully, the parka falling past her knees. Her first steps were slow, but she did not sit back down. Then let's get to work. Over the next hour, the cabin became a survival problem instead of a family drama. That was better. Problems had edges. I taped the drafty window frames with foil tape from my pack. Chloe found canned soup, 2 sealed water jugs, a manual opener, and a box of stale crackers in the pantry. She warmed soup on the stove and sorted the supplies into 3 groups without being asked: food, water, and items that could burn. You're organized, I said. I'm an architect, she replied, setting the last can beside the stove. If you cannot organize what holds weight, something falls. I looked up. You still are an architect. She paused, then nodded once. I am. The wind shoved hard against the east wall. The logs creaked. Chloe turned toward the ceiling. That roof framing is wrong, she said. I followed her line of sight. Explain. Scissor trusses, cheap fasteners, summer cabin design pretending it belongs in winter. If snow collects unevenly after a branch impact, the load transfers badly over the living room. She pointed to the ceiling beam near the broken plaster seam. That joint is already stressed. Trade action aligned. She was not just an architect, because the story needed a title. She saw structure under pressure. I took out my headlamp and checked the joint. She was right. The beam had a slight twist where the roof met the east wall. Good catch. Her fingers tightened around the soup mug. Good enough to be useful? Yes. The answer landed harder than I expected. She looked down at the mug, then back at the ceiling. My father likes to say I design pretty lobbies and call it architecture. What do you design? Mountain community centers, adaptive cabins, fire-safe retreat housing, buildings that do not become traps when weather changes. A log collapsed inside the stove, sending sparks against the iron door. I looked around the cheap cabin. Then he brought you to the kind of structure you hate. He brought me to the kind of structure he profits from. There it was again, the real fight beneath the storm. Not just family control, professional erasure. I unfolded my topographic map on the table and marked Cabin 4 with a pencil. My outpost is here. I drew a line toward a red square beyond the ridge. 2 miles, mostly uphill, tree line halfway. If we move, we use snowshoes, a tether, and strict pacing. No heroics. You step where I step. If you need to stop, you tap my shoulder twice. You do not save pride at the expense of oxygen. She listened without interrupting. Then she touched the map with one finger. This slope faces west. Yes. Wind should break after the rock shelf. I glanced at her. You read terrain? I read site plans. Terrain is just a site plan with worse handwriting. A smile almost pulled at my mouth. The first hour of warmth had done what it needed to do. It had given her back enough of herself to argue with a mountain. Around midnight, the cabin shifted. Not a sound at first, a feeling. The floorboards made a low complaint beneath my boots. Snow pressed against the shutters. The fire burned, steady but thin, and the stove had to fight every draft that found its way through the walls. I logged the temperature, wind direction, roof noise, and available wood in my field notebook. Chloe watched from the chair near the stove. You document everything. Memory gets romantic under stress. Notes stay rude. That sounds like something my contracts attorney would say. Then your attorney is useful. Ah, she is. Chloe looked toward the window. Sarah. She helped me file my independent firm documents before I told my father. Can you reach her from the outpost? Yes. If the satellite phone works. It works. The cabin groaned again. This time, Chloe heard it too. Her eyes went to the ceiling joint. East load is shifting. I stood. A crack like a gunshot split the air. A massive pine branch crashed onto the roof. The ceiling buckled above the living room. Plaster dust fell in a gray sheet. 1 second later, the front window shattered inward, throwing ice, wind, and snow across the floor. The fire in the stove flared, then struggled under the sudden blast of cold. I moved. Pack. Folder. Now. Chloe was already reaching for the reintegration papers and her small satchel. Good. No panic. No frozen star. Action. I pulled the emergency duffel from beside the door and opened it on the floor. Insulated pants, wool socks, boots, goggles. Put them on over what you have. She took the gear. I turned my back to give her space and checked the roofline with the headlamp. The truss had bowed another inch. Too much. The cabin was no longer a warm box. It was becoming a cold trap. When Chloe finished layering, I knelt beside one boot and kept my eyes on the strap and the exposed gap above the wool sock. I tightened the boot seal, checked for skin exposure, then stepped back. Other boot. She set it forward. I repeated the process. Practical. Fast. No linger. No line crossed. This is 2 miles, I said. Uphill. In a whiteout. The first half will be the worst. You follow my tracks. If your vision goes, call it. If your fingers go numb, call it. If your pride tells you to stay quiet, ignore it. Step where you step, she said. Tap twice if you need a stop. 6. Tap twice. I clipped a short safety tether from my harness to the belt of her emergency pack. This keeps us together if visibility drops. It does not pull you. You walk your own steps. She looked at the tether, then at me. Good. I pushed the door open. The storm swallowed the porch. We stepped into the white. The mountain became sound and pressure. Wind slammed across the ridge hard enough to turn each breath into work. Snow struck my goggles in bursts. My trekking poles found ice beneath powder, and I placed each step where Chloe could use it. Behind me, the tether stayed steady. Not slack. Not dragged tight. Steady. That was her. Moving. The first quarter mile took 20 minutes. The second took longer. The access road vanished under drifted snow, so I cut left along the tree markers I had tied years earlier for exactly this kind of night. Every 100 paces, I checked the line. Every 100 paces, she was there. The cold worked on us without mercy. It stiffened the straps on my pack and turned the moisture around my mask into ice. Chloe stumbled twice, but corrected herself both times before the tether could pull. At the first rock shelf, she tapped my shoulder twice. I stopped immediately and planted my poles. Turn your back to the wind, I shouted. She did. I stepped sideways to block the worst of it and pulled a thermal flask from my chest pocket. Glucose water, small sips. She took the cup with both hands. Lecked. The metal shook once against her glove, then steadied. She drank. Halfway? She asked. Not yet. She looked at me through frost-marked goggles. Honest answer. Rude notes. Less than halfway. She nodded. No complaint. No collapse. Just information received and filed. When she handed the cup back, she pointed toward the darker rise ahead. Rock shelf? Cuts northwest? In. Yes. Work. Then the wind should drop after that line. Correct. She adjusted her pack strap. Then let's get to the line. It. We moved again. The final climb burned through everything that was not necessary. There was no speech left. No family. No contracts. No father. No independence. Only step. Pole. Breath. Tether. Step again. When the reinforced steel door of the outpost appeared through the storm, it looked less like a building than a promise. I punched the keypad code with numb fingers, hauled the door open, and waited until Chloe crossed the threshold on her own. Then I slammed the door behind us. The silence inside the outpost landed so hard it seemed to ring. Concrete walls, steel shelves, 2 cots, diesel heater, supply lockers, satellite terminal, nothing pretty, everything useful. I hit the master switch. The heater roared awake. Warm air blasted across the room. Chloe stood in the entryway for 3 seconds, then set the folder carefully on the metal table before sitting on the nearest cot. The folder came first. Even now, I unclipped the tether and hung it on the wall hook. Wet outer layers off. Dry blankets are in the green locker. You can change in the storage room. It locks from the inside. Axe. 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 She looked toward the storage room door. Another small exit. Another choice. Thank you. While she changed into dry thermal layers from the emergency bin, I logged the cabin failure, generator sabotage, and forced relocation into the outpost book. When she returned, wrapped in a wool blanket and still wearing my parka over it, I handed her a mug of hot tea. She sat on the opposite cot. Snow melted from the hem of the parka onto the concrete floor. Chloe set both boots flat under her, lifted the mug with 2 shaking hands, and still met my eyes without looking away. You didn't pull me, she said. No, the tether held, but you didn't pull. That was the point. And my father would have said he saved me by dragging me uphill. Your father is not here. For a moment, the heater filled the room with steady mechanical thunder. Then Chloe set the mug down and opened the folder. I need the satellite phone. Now? Now. I pointed to the desk. She crossed the room, picked up the phone, and dialed from memory. The call took 2 tries. On the third, someone answered. Sarah, Chloe said, voice hoarse but clear. It's me. I'm alive. I'm at the Regional Mountain Authority outpost with Ethan Scott as witness. I need you to open the emergency packet for Flores Independent Design and record this call. Pause. Then Chloe's shoulders squared. No, I am not signing the reintegration release. I am not surrendering my contracts. I need you to notify our investors that the meeting in 2 weeks is still on. Another pause. Her eyes moved to the outpost window, where snow beat against the reinforced glass. Yes, she said. Tell them the mountain delayed me. It did not change my mind. She ended the call and placed the receiver back in its cradle. Only then did she sit. Not collapse. Sit. Like the decision had taken more strength than the trek. I slid the incident log across the table. Read it. Tell me if anything is wrong. And she read every line. Generator wire severed. Guest left without vehicle keys. No heat. No communication. Cabin roof compromised. Emergency relocation to outpost. Witness. Ethan Scott. At the bottom, she added 1 sentence in neat, precise handwriting. Guest states she did not consent to remaining at cabin 4 and was told transport would return after she reconsidered business decisions. She signed her name, then slid the book back. Now it is accurate. I looked at the sentence. That was not a victim's note. That was evidence. Get some sleep, I said. She glanced at the storm beyond the window. You will stay awake. Yes. Because of the weather? Because I am responsible for this shelter. She studied the outpost, the heater, the radio panel, the steel door, the map, the logbook. Then she nodded. I believe you. That sentence did more than any thank you would have. I sat at the comms desk and kept the amber lantern burning between the cots until her breathing evened out. The storm broke at dawn. Sunlight hit the snow with the bright, merciless clarity that comes after a dangerous night, making every drift look harmless from a distance. I restored the satellite uplink at 7:20 and reached Sarah at the dispatch office by 7:31. Scott, Sarah said, voice clipped with relief. I lost your repeater last night. I was 2 minutes from calling the sheriff and making enemies. Cabin 4 occupied. Guest safe at Ridge Outpost. Cabin compromised. Generator sabotage documented. Need code red transport and law enforcement witness. Already moving, she said. Deputy Miller is on the lower trail with the snowcat. Who else? A pause. Flores' family representative insisted on coming. I looked across the room. Chloe was standing at the window, wrapped in the emergency blanket, watching the clean snow beyond the glass. She heard enough from my face. My father's assistant, she said. Likely. She walked to the metal table and picked up the folder. This time her hands did not shake. The snowcat arrived at 8:15. The engine drone rolled over the ridge long before the vehicle appeared. I opened the steel door and stepped onto the grated porch. Chloe stayed just behind me by her own choice, visible but protected from the wind. Deputy Miller climbed down first, heavy coat dusted with snow. He looked tired and uncomfortable, which was usually how he looked when rich tourists turned emergencies into favors. The second man wore a pristine black parka and city shoes that sank half an inch into the packed snow. Richard Flores' assistant. He carried a leather portfolio. That told me everything. Scott, Miller called. Good to see you upright. You too. The assistant stepped forward. Miss Flores, your father has arranged private transport from the lower helipad once the trail opens. He sent documents for review while we wait. He held out the portfolio. I did not move toward it. Chloe did. One step. Then, another. She stopped outside the doorway, still within the shelter boundary but clearly speaking for herself. I am not reviewing business documents in an emergency shelter, she said. The assistant's smile tightened. Your father is concerned about your condition. Then he can read the incident report. It would be best for everyone if this family matter stayed private. Deputy Miller looked at the portfolio. I looked at him. Regional Mountain Authority controls emergency movement during Code Red, I said. Deputy, you can transport a guest medically or logistically, but no civilian document gets signed in my shelter. Miller rubbed one gloved hand over his jaw. He's right. The assistant turned to him. Deputy Mr. Flores. No, Miller said. His discomfort hardened into something better. No business signatures. Not here. Not during active emergency transport. Chloe held out her hand. May I see the cover page? I looked at her. She glanced back once. Her decision. The assistant gave her the first page only. She read it, then folded it once, twice. Not angry. Precise. This release states that Flores Independent Design is voluntarily reintegrating into Flores Commercial due to executive instability. Her voice carried cleanly in the cold air. That statement is false. The assistant opened his mouth. Chloe continued, I want the satellite phone, Deputy Miller as public witness, and Sarah at dispatch on the line. Miller looked surprised, then nodded. I stepped back and let her pass into the outpost. She used the satellite phone at the desk, Sarah answered. Miller stood in the doorway, snow melting off his boots. The assistant waited outside because I did not invite him in. Chloe placed the release cover page on the table and turned it over to the blank back. She wrote slowly. The pen scratched across the paper. When she finished, she read it aloud. I, Chloe Flores, reject any claim that my independent firm is being voluntarily reintegrated into Flores Commercial. I do not consent to any transfer of contracts, client relationships, designs, or intellectual property. I request counsel contact all investors and preserve this call as evidence. She signed. Then, she looked at Miller. Did you witness that? Miller nodded. Yes, ma'am. Sarah? The phone speaker crackled. Recorded and logged. Chloe capped the pen, walked to the door, and handed the page back to the assistant. Tell my father his lesson failed, she said. I survived the night, and I am keeping my firm. The assistant's face went flat. For a second, I thought he would argue. Then the wind moved hard across the ridge, and he remembered where he was. He returned to the snowcat. Miller lingered at the steps. Scott, he said quietly, I'll need that sabotage report. You'll have it before we descend. He looked at Chloe. And your statement, Miss Flores? Tep, you'll have that too. By noon, the trail was safe enough for controlled descent. Chloe rode down in the snowcat with Deputy Miller and her folder on her lap. I followed in the RMA vehicle after Sarah routed a plow halfway up the access road. The cabin looked worse in daylight, roofline sagging, window boarded temporarily, generator shed standing open like a confession. I photographed the severed wire with a scale marker, logged the branch impact, tagged the stove temperature, collected the broken generator lead in an evidence bag. Chloe watched from the snowcat window. She did not look away. 2 weeks later, the convention center in the city smelled like expensive coffee, fresh carpet, and printed brochures. It was a long way from the ridge. I stood near the back of the conference hall in a dark jacket that felt too smooth compared to my canvas gear. My hands wanted pockets. My boots wanted snow. The room had too many polished surfaces and too many people speaking in careful investor voices. I had only come because the front desk had handed me a badge with my name on it. Ethan Scott, safety consultant. No one had asked me before printing it. I suspected Chloe. She stood at the podium beneath a clean white screen, presenting the launch of Flores' independent design. No family logo, no inherited branding. Just her name, her firm, and a set of mountain housing plans that made the room go quiet for the right reasons. She wore a navy suit and spoke with the precision I had heard in the cabin when she described the failing trusses. Only now, everyone else heard it too. This design assumes the weather will win if we pretend it is decorative, she said, pointing to the ridge housing cross-section. So the structure does not pretend. Reinforced truss systems, generator housing accessible from inside the windbreak, redundant communication, emergency shelter classification built into the code review. CM. AS. A man near the front raised his hand. Isn't that excessive for a retreat property? Chloe looked at him. No. Leaving people with one fragile system in a remote environment is excessive. Safety is not a luxury feature. The line landed. I saw it move across the investors. Not emotion. Recognition. She had not just survived a mountain cabin. She had converted the night into design criteria. That was competence. That was ownership. When the presentation ended, applause filled the hall. Investors moved toward her. A reporter asked about family opposition. Chloe answered without lowering her eyes. Flores' independent design is not a rebellion. It is the firm I should have built years ago. Sarah stood near the side wall, tablet in hand, smiling, like someone who had personally helped keep the line open through a storm. Deputy Miller was there too, looking uncomfortable in a tie. He gave me a small nod from the coffee station. Closed loops. Witnesses. In the right room. Evidence turned into ground. I waited until Chloe's crowd thinned before moving toward the exit. She had secured her shelter. She did not need me standing guard in a city building full of security cameras and caterers. Ethan. Her voice cut through the room, with the same clarity it had carried across the ridge. I stopped. Chloe walked away from the investors and crossed the carpet toward me. The room noticed. Of course it did. People always noticed when someone chose a direction without asking permission. She stopped in front of me and held out a laminated consultant badge. Not a hand, not a dramatic gesture. A badge. Clear. Practical. Public. I had them print the wrong title, she said. I looked at it. Ethan Scott, Structural Safety Consultant. That title is accurate. Partly. She took the badge back, unclipped the paper insert, and turned it over. On the blank side, she had written in blue ink, Root Partner. I looked at the words longer than I expected. The noise of the convention hall softened around the edges. Chloe held the badge between us, not pushing it into my hand. Offering. The mountain taught me something, she said. Not that I needed someone to drag me out. You didn't. You showed me the route, kept the line steady, and let me walk it. An investor had followed her halfway across the floor, curious now. Chloe turned slightly so the room could hear, without making it a performance. Mr. Vance, she said to the investor, I'd like you to meet Ethan Scott. He will be consulting on emergency access and structural safety for our ridge developments. Then she looked back at me. If he accepts, there it was. A title, a place, and a choice. No rescue debt. No hidden exchange. No storm forcing the answer. I took the badge. I accept the consulting role, I said. Her mouth curved. And the other title? I turned the badge over again. Root Partner. Pending review, I said. Her smile widened. Of course. I require maps. I brought 3. Then the application is strong. That pulled a laugh from her. Not the tired laugh from my cabin. Not the brittle one from the shelter. A full, unguarded sound that made 3 investors look over like they had missed the better presentation. Sarah appeared beside us with her tablet. For the record, she said, I support the Root Partner title. Deputy Miller lifted his coffee from across the room. I witnessed nothing. Wise, I said. Chloe took the badge and clipped it to my jacket herself, careful to keep the movement simple and public, no lingering, no performance. There, she said. Now you cannot leave before the safety panel. I was not leaving. You were 2 steps from the door. I was assessing exits. That is guide language for leaving. I. She was right. I did not admit it. Instead, I looked toward the screen where her ridge development plans still glowed. You used the cabin failure. I used the lesson he meant to break me with, and built a better shelter. Yes. The answer came with no hesitation. That was the part that stayed with me. 2 weeks earlier, she had sat in a dark cabin with a folder in her lap and winter eating the walls. Now she stood under bright conference lights, offering the world a structure that would not abandon the next person to the weather. The mountain had not made her small. It had revealed the size she had been fighting to claim. Later that afternoon, after the safety panel, Chloe found me near the loading doors where the air smelled faintly of rain on pavement. The city sky had gone gray. Not storm gray, just weather. She carried the rolled plans under one arm. You really would have left, she said. I did not want to crowd your win. She leaned the plans against the wall between us. My father crowded every win I ever had. That is not what you do. I stayed quiet. She looked at the plans. I don't want a guard, Ethan. I don't want someone standing in front of every room for me. She tapped the roll of drawings. I want someone who respects the route I choose and still checks the bridge before I cross it. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. Inside, the convention hall doors opened and closed behind us, releasing bursts of voices and applause. I can do that, I said. I know. She picked up the plans and handed me the smallest roll. Then start with this one. Emergency access draft for the North Ridge site. Tell me where I'm wrong. I took it. That could take hours. There is coffee. City coffee is unreliable. There is also dinner. I looked at her. Business dinner? Mostly. Mostly is a dangerous word. That is why I asked the guide. The first drops of rain tapped against the loading bay awning. Not snow. Not ice. Not a storm trying to erase the road. Just rain. Chloe looked toward it and smiled. Come on, she said. Let's find the route. I followed her out under the awning, the safety draft tucked under one arm, and the route partner badge still clipped to my jacket. For the first time in years, I was not walking ahead to break trail for someone behind me. I was walking beside someone who had already chosen the direction. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Real safety does not test your loyalty. It gives you a way out. Green flag. They do not take over your storm. They help you choose the next step. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.